Good afternoon.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Wonderful. No snow.
Oh, good. Welcome to all of our guests just joining us. I'm Joanna Roach with GSN Planet, and we are really pleased to have with us our partner, one of our sponsors, Will Simpson, who's with Green Circle Ideas. He's our guest speaker today, and we're super excited to partner with Green Circles. We've also got Bill Delleman in our crowd out there, and Will and Bill are generally a team, and we had the great pleasure of meeting them in person and getting to hang out with them in Ojai this year. So really, really happy to have them here this afternoon to share this amazing work that they're doing and really bring it forward to the GSN community and start to advance the conversation that we're having about sustainability in our workplaces. So welcome, Will, and welcome, Bill, and welcome to all of our friends and neighbors here at GSN this afternoon. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Joanna, and good to see some familiar faces. I really hope that we can cultivate a great dialogue throughout this webinar and throughout this whole series. I think, as I said in Ojai, Green Circle Salons is an established 13-year brand. When it comes to the spa industry, pardon the pun, but we're still very green. So we have a lot to learn, and I'm certainly hopeful that the Green Spa Network can teach us a lot. So this is something where really we can all be involved and we can share and gather insights. And over the next year, I think that there's going to be a lot of really cool developments coming in the way of sustainability for the Green Spa Network. So with that said, should we begin here, Joanna?
You can jump right in, Will. Thank you for being with us today.
So the Green Circle team is sort of familiar with this exercise. We love to kick off all of our meetings by just really becoming present in the room. So I'd invite you to take a moment to kind of arrive here, relax. Let's just be together and be present inside of this conversation. And the way that we really like to do that is through square breathing exercise. So I would welcome you to, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes, but just join me in a quick exercise to kind of find ourselves here and to relax into the conversation. So we're going to breathe in for 4 and hold for 4 and exhale out of our mouths for 4 and hold for 4. And we're going to do this 3 more times. So in through your nose, holding for 4, out through your mouth, and hold for 4. And 2 more, in through your nose for 4, hold for 4, exhale, and hold. And last one, in through your nose, hold it, exhaling through your mouth, and hold. And there we have it. I hope everybody's feeling a little bit relaxed. I hope you had an opportunity to kind of shake off the day a little bit and really just become present. So the Spa Planet Alliance is something that we introduced in Ojai in the fall. For those of you who were there, thank you so much for tuning in again. I really appreciate it. My commitment is to bring value to this conversation for everybody, whether you're hearing it for the first time or whether you've been following our actions for a little bit longer. So I like to begin with sort of a little thought exercise. What you see here are 4 distinct climate events. Obviously, as you can see, they involve water, they involve fire, but I wonder if anybody knows what these 4 events, seemingly disparate events, all have in common. So just take a moment to really look at these 4 images and consider where they might all sort of have a commonality. The answer is that all of these events took place in the last half of 2021. What we're seeing is rapidly accelerating climate events. These used to be things that happened in far off places. We'd hear about tsunamis in Thailand or earthquakes in remote parts of the world. But the reality is that all of these events happened in North America, in our own backyards. 2 of these events actually happened within 50 miles of where I'm sitting right now. In Canada, we had the hottest temperatures ever on record. And the next day, we had some of the most significant forest fires ever on record, destroying an entire town. And then just a few short months later, we had historic flooding, which actually separated an entire region of Canada from the rest of the country through a major arterial route. So what we're seeing here is, as I said, rapidly accelerating climate change. It's happening faster and faster, and every time it's happening more aggressive. In December, I opened up my National Geographic email and saw this headline: "The weather disasters of 2021 are hard to ignore." And I couldn't agree more. It doesn't matter if you're on the Eastern Seaboard, or if you're on the West Coast, or even in the interior. North America wide, we have been rocked to our core by climate events. Now, this is the doomsday clock. It's a pretty ominous name, but for good reason. This clock was invented in 1947 by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists as a way to really predict the likelihood of global human catastrophe based on a number of factors, environmental as well as political. And every year, the atomic scientists, beginning with a group of Albert Einstein's students, every year they tell us how close we are to midnight. Midnight is Armageddon. And every year we inch closer to midnight, game over. For the last 2 years, we've been told that we're sitting at 100 seconds to midnight. Climate change is getting harder and harder to ignore. Now, we saw this in the news as well. At COP26, this was the conversation being had. Even the Vatican is now telling us that we need to take radical climate action if we want to preserve the planet for future generations. At the same time, we're also hearing that consumers are waking up to the need for sustainability in the products and services that they're supporting. Green business is no longer just a fad, but it's actually mission critical. And consumers increasingly are starting to drive that change. So we know that we all want to do something about climate change, but I suppose the question is, when have we done enough? And what's it really going to take to make the difference that we need in order to preserve our future? And this is really where Green Circle steps into the conversation. We are all of these things. We're movers and shakers, we're mobilizers, we're activists, and we believe in organizing as a community around climate change and sustainable action. We've done this historically inside the North American area, but we realize that this is something that requires greater action on all fronts, and that's where we've identified the spa and wellness industry as a place for us to take action as well. This is where it all began. We know that, believe it or not, the North American beauty industry generates 877 pounds of waste every single minute, 421,000 pounds a day of waste going to the landfill. And our founder was sitting in a chair, getting his hair done, when he saw these types of materials going into a black trash bag and asked, is there a better way to do business? And the answer, of course, is yes. All of these materials that you see here can be recovered, recycled, or otherwise repurposed. And that's how the Green Circle movement was born. So together, working with our various stakeholder partners, manufacturers, distributors, and service businesses, we create a number of different access points to make considerable changes inside the industry in terms of educating and enhancing brand visibility on the sustainability journey, activating by creating different programs that actually recover and repurpose this material, and ultimately closing the loop on these materials so that we can then show how, as an industry, we are making change and driving results in terms of climate disruption. Green Circle is a certified B Corp, and this is something that we're going to be speaking about later on this month, on the 28th. The second webinar of this series is going to be B Corp, becoming a B Corp with Sloco Health, Natasha, and Saeed, who I know is here from Blue Beautifully, as well as a member of the B Lab group. And we're going to be talking about really what this means to be a certified B Corp. But in a nutshell, it's using business as a force for good. So when Green Circle first started, we knew the importance of being a triple bottom line company: people, planet, and profit. B Corps are organizations that really have committed to the highest level of accountability. And every 3 years, they have to recertify to show that everything they're doing benefits not just shareholders, but stakeholders. And by that, I mean it has to conform to social and environmental mandates. And there's a commitment to constantly leveling up and improving your score so that you can really be transparent in showing that everything you do aligns with people and the planet. Now, to become a B Corp, you begin with a minimum score of 80 points, and Green Circle achieved that. But every 3 years when you recertify, the expectation, as I said, is that you're leveling up. So when Green Circle recertifies in 2022, we're going to be recertifying around 100 points. And our commitment is to continue that progress so that every 3 years, we're showing a continual improvement approach. What this ladders up to is the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So for those who aren't familiar, the Sustainable Development Goals were laid out by the United Nations as part of the Paris Agreement, where we as a global movement are trying to keep our emissions, our carbon emissions, from rising, creating global warming. Our commitment is to keep that warming from less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. And these are the goals that will help us to achieve that. So there are 17 distinct goals, of which Green Circle has chosen a few specific ones that we're aligned with: quality education, climate action, life below water. And these goals are really a universal call to action. So it's happening at the government level, it's happening at the business level, and it's happening at the individual level. The SDGs are something that every business really needs to become familiar with and learn how their actions have consequences, positive or negative, on the planet. And this is something that increasingly we're seeing in the media. We're hearing about Fortune 500 companies building this into their reporting, so that environmental and social governance are really a reflection of their commitment to the SDGs. Our guarantee is that we are a zero waste to landfill certified organization. So just as we have to undergo rigorous reporting and auditing by the B Corp group, we also do the same thing with a third party called Carbon Trust. And this zero waste to landfill designation is our promise and our commitment that of the materials we collect from participating organizations, nothing will ever enter the landfill. The Green Circle movement is based around 4 key pillars: helping organizations to be green, to build revenue, to save money, and to gain clients. We believe that all 4 of these commitments are integral to the long-term success of the business. Ultimately, all businesses are for profit. And so your financial sustainability is just as important as your environmental sustainability. It doesn't matter how green you are if you can't sustain your business into the future. And similarly, it doesn't matter how profitable you are if the work you're doing comes at the detriment of our environment. So these 4 pillars were created 13 years ago to allow us to move into the salon industry. And these are the same 4 pillars that serve all of our businesses today. Be green. This is obviously the reason why we exist. This is the most important pillar, and this is the one pillar that we absolutely cannot do without. We know that the landfill does not work. The take, make, and waste model does not work. When we create things or when we buy things that are destined for the landfill rather than to be regenerated and recirculated in the economy, it's a one-way ticket. And the result of that is, of course, environmental degradation. A landfill creates a significant impact on the greenhouse effect. At the same time, it's also leaching into our groundwater. And we know that the materials being sent to the landfill are really just going to sit there where they have no long-term value to us. So the initial problem that we were looking to solve was the methane problem. Now, when hair, for example, goes into the landfill, as I mentioned, it can no longer be used as a resource, but it's actually creating environmental challenges as well. An alternative to that, an alternative to all of that methane being released into the atmosphere, is using hair as a resource. So the first place that we looked to do that was by making oil booms. Now, a quick science lesson here for you. Hair is biologically designed to wick oil off of the scalp. It allows our scalp to be able to continue to breathe. Well, in an oil spill scenario, hair actually is a fantastic adsorbent, meaning that the oil binds to the hair shaft and will actually stay clinging on and can be pulled out of the water. And this boom you see here can actually be squeezed out and the oil can be harnessed back and put into a barrel and actually sold back onto the market. So we've tried this a number of different times and the result is really fantastic. Hair can hold up to 10 times its own weight in oil. And that boom can be reused a number of times before ultimately it's sort of lost its ability to collect any more oil, at which case it can become a fuel source. So Green Circle actually got involved at the community level in oil spill cleanup. We've created oil spill kits, emergency remediation tools that can be deployed in the case of an oil spill. And we've actually been on site supporting some of these cleanups in the past. Now, this is just one example of what we can do with hair. And it's a fantastic one because of all the oil spills that occur out in the world. However, there are a lot of other opportunities as well. Hair can actually be turned into a mat. So using a felting machine, you can create this hair mat that can be used as a natural insulation. It can be used as a fiberglass substitute. It can be used as a slow release fertilizer. And it can even be used in the same way that it's used to collect oil. It could actually be used as a stormwater filtration tool, so that things like pesticides and pet waste will actually be filtered out before that material goes back into our stormwater systems. This is my personal favorite. Green Circle has actually created a type of material, we call it biocomposite. And this is made out of post-industrial plastic and the hair that we collect from some of our salons. And it gets injection molded and turned into recycling bins. So this is our first prototype. These recycling bins are actually being distributed to our members currently. And as you can see, there's a cheeky little stamp on there that says made with human hair. This is just one example of what can happen with these materials when we really rethink the waste cycle and we reclaim that waste instead of letting it finish out its days in the landfill, where we know it's eventually going to contribute to climate disruption. Of course, working with salons, we knew that hair color was a massive challenge as well. And when that material gets rinsed down the drain, ultimately it ends up back in our water bodies, and it becomes a serious challenge to get that out of the water systems. Ultimately, it affects marine wildlife and it moves up the chain until we either drink that water or we consume that wildlife, and our kidney becomes the final filter for this material. Now, this isn't unique to the salon industry. This is the case with medication and microfibers and all kinds of other things going out into our water stream. However, we know that if we can cut this off at the source, we have a really good chance of preserving the integrity of those water systems. So Green Circle does capture that hair color at the source. That goes through a process where it gets dewatered. So hair color, which is about 95% water, can actually become neutralized and go back into the water table. And the remaining pigment can actually be used to create a new clean fuel source. And now in 2014, after we'd been doing this for about 5 years, we decided we needed to do something for estheticians and spa technicians, because they were always in the back of the room saying, what about me? What can you do for all of the waste that I create? And it was a real challenge because, unlike hair, which can be turned into something like a boom, or hair color, which can be broken down into its component parts, there wasn't really anything we could do with what was traditionally considered trash coming from those treatment rooms. So we looked to the waste management hierarchy. Now, the waste management hierarchy basically says, first, you want to, refuse or prevent. And then if you can't do that, you want to reduce what you're using. And if you can't do that, then you want to reuse what you've used. Now, if we're talking about something like waxing or, various different spa or aesthetic applications, the reality is you can't use less and you can't reuse that material. You can't recycle that material in any kind of conventional system either. So the last remaining solution is what we call recovery. And that is a viable alternative to what would otherwise inevitably have to end up in the landfill. So I'm going to just walk you through this very quickly. This is a waste to energy recovery system. The material begins here on the left, where it gets delivered to this facility. It gets dumped into a large hopper, and a big claw comes and takes this material and puts it through a combustion system. Now, in that process, the material is heated to a really high temperature, and that heat proceeds to heat up a series of water-filled pipes. Those pipes then create steam. And that steam, if you look at the top, goes through a turbine and into a generator where it's converted into clean, usable electricity that goes back into our grid. In that process, if you look to the bottom, you'll see fly ash is created. Now, fly ash is a hazardous waste and needs to be managed as such. So first that goes through a series of filters and controls so that what's being released out into the atmosphere is basically just hot air. That fly ash would then go off to a facility where it's managed, and it's about 1% of what you begin with in terms of mass. And like I said, that does have to be treated as a special hazardous waste. The other result is bottom ash. And bottom ash can be used as an aggregate material. So it can be used to make bricks and cement and asphalt and any number of different aggregate solutions. And then in that process, of course, you also have an opportunity to collect the metals that are recovered in that process. So if you picture, an esthetician putting a bunch of makeup containers into the waste to energy stream, all of the screws and the metal components from those containers would actually be reclaimed at the end of that process. And in this solution, what we're able to do is take something that would otherwise end up in the landfill and provide a really viable solution in the form of clean energy, a new aggregate stream, and ultimately nothing is going to the landfill. Now, how do we support businesses to build revenue? Well, this is an interesting question, and it was certainly a challenge when we launched this initiative because we knew being green couldn't come at a cost to the business. If it affects the profitability of the business, it's just not a viable long-term solution. And so that's where we created the environmental stewardship fee. This is essentially an education point. This is a way of supporting these businesses to charge and offset the cost of being green. So for a small fee, for example, $2 on a service visit, that pays not only for the collection of materials by Green Circle, but that also enables the business to invest in other long-term solutions, products, services, technologies that will allow you to continue to level up on your environmental commitments. So that small fee pays for the entire system. And it's essentially crowdsourcing. At a very small level, it makes not much of a difference. But when we look at that multiplied across the entire industry, it becomes a funding mechanism that allows for very significant green change. Saving money. Well, again, by investing that green change purse into different products and services, technology that supports with your utilities, greener products, and ultimately a more efficient business operation, you're realizing better profitability while also improving the guest experience. We know that anytime you can reduce waste, you're increasing profitability. I just want to say that again. Anytime you reduce waste, you increase profitability. This is the same in our personal lives. This is the same in terms of what we consume or how we run our business. It's the same theory in every application. By wasting less, we're preserving our resources better and more efficiently, and ultimately, we're delivering more profitability. And lastly, supporting you to gain clients. So we know, as I mentioned earlier, that consumers are increasingly supporting green and sustainable choices. However, we weren't sure exactly to what extent. And so Green Circle at the beginning of 2020 actually authored a survey with modern salon research to really understand the buying habits of consumers in the beauty space. And here's what we learned. 72% of clients would actually be interested in knowing what happens to the beauty waste at the end of their service. Not only that, but 60% of consumers would actually consider changing salons if they knew that all of the waste from their service would be recycled or repurposed. And 88% of beauty professionals believe that it's important to work in an environment that's green and sustainable. So we don't have these statistics to really back up the spa industry. But what we know is that service businesses are often aligned around the same goals, the same mission, and they share a lot of the same structures. And so we believe that this is very much the same of spa technicians and guests who are supporting these businesses. In 2020, I think you'd agree, things changed pretty significantly. And unfortunately, this to me kind of summarizes the mood of 2020. Unfortunately, this was something that became a very familiar sight for most of us, walking down the street or through a park and seeing discarded personal protective equipment, which up until now, most of us had never even had to wear in public. Unfortunately, that material didn't just stay there on our streets and in our parks, but it actually started to end up in some of our more vulnerable spaces. And of course, the effect of that was that it started to have a really significant impact on our most vulnerable species. Green Circle launched the PPE Recovery Initiative as a way for professionals and for their guests to be able to maintain a commitment to safety and sustainability. By launching this program, we addressed the challenge that our members who were now recovering up to 95% of their waste through Green Circle suddenly had this new stream that they needed to answer for. And so by setting up these boxes inside their organizations, they were now able to not only maintain that commitment to sustainability, but also show a direct line of sight to safety, so they could stay committed to keeping their guests and their teams safe while also doing the right thing. Now, this took off in ways that we totally did not expect. This became a favorite of groups like the Salvation Army, YMCA, banks, and eventually even hospitals. The PPE Recovery Initiative, I think, really shows that even in the midst of some of our darkest times, there is still a really strong commitment to doing the right thing. And the PPE Recovery Initiative, I'm really pleased to tell you, is still in full force today. And this is going to continue long beyond the pandemic, because so many different organizations and sectors have recognized that they had a waste problem long before the pandemic, and that will survive after we stop wearing masks in public. So the PPE Recovery Initiative was a really good thing that came out of a really tough time for a lot of us. And we're pleased to tell you that all Green Circle members are automatically enrolled for free in the PPE Recovery Initiative. Now in 2021, Green Circle took on a new task, because we always love a good challenge, and that was the challenge of ocean plastic. So every year we do something for Earth Month to kind of recognize our network and get people galvanized around the subject of the environment. In 2021, it was working with Plastic Bank to recover this ocean-bound plastic. Now, Plastic Bank works in developing nations where they just don't have that recycling infrastructure. And unfortunately, these materials are all basically just pushed out into the ocean. By investing in the Plastic Bank solution, we're not only creating wages for people in these developing nations, but we're also creating solutions for the recovery of that plastic, to encourage the building of infrastructure for the recycling of that material, and ultimately creating what we call social plastic, which is using that plastic as a commodity to make new materials. And I'm pleased to tell you that we recovered 2.1 million bottles of plastic, ocean-bound plastic, with the help of our members and our partners. In 2022, we are launching the Spa Planet Alliance, which is why we're here speaking with you today. It's really bringing this opportunity for environmental action to the spa and wellness category. So it's your way to recover up to 95% of your brand's spa, and aesthetics materials so that you can maintain that commitment to sustainability and show very real action on that front. And ultimately, at the end of the year, you'll be given a certificate which shows you not only what, as a movement, we've recovered together, but what your individual service business or your manufacturing or distribution arm has been able to recover. I should also mention that these designations that we are affiliated with, B Corp, Zero Waste to Landfill, these all become visibility points within your organization as well, including UPS carbon neutral shipping. So it doesn't matter where you're located in North America, when you're sending these materials to Green Circle, this is all part of our carbon neutral commitment. So a little bit more about that. By April 1st of 2022, all of our members will actually be certified carbon neutral. Now, Green Circle for some time has been operating as though we were a carbon neutral business through UPS carbon neutral shipping, inbound and outbound, by using green energy inside of all of our material recovery facilities. But what we're doing is we're actually peeling that back at the service level. So your team's commute to their business, the actual services being performed inside the facility, and the facility's outputs, the utilities and the other emissions associated with that business will actually themselves be offset. So we're working towards achieving net zero by 2030. And the first step to do that is to make our entire network carbon neutral. And I'm really excited to tell you we're almost there. And by Earth Month of this year, we will be a carbon neutral organization. So this is where we get into the exercise of the day, which is asking you, what does 2022 look like for you? What kinds of plans does your organization have, and how are you going to make them achievable? To that end, I've got a few questions that I want to ask you, and then we're going to break out into groups, and we're going to kind of go through this together so that we can see what's really possible inside of the Green Spa Network. So the first question is, what meaningful changes can your organization make in the year ahead? What obstacles can you foresee? And as a team, how can you overcome them? And lastly, what stakeholders do you need to bring in to the conversation to make it a success? So with that, I'm going to ask Megan to set up a series of breakout rooms, and we're going to have this conversation, then we're going to come back and do some sharing.
we get kicked out?
I think you got kicked out and I left early
Oh,
because they didn't want you to be alone here.
oh, thanks.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for rejoining. So here's what I want to do next is just quickly go around and see what a couple of the key takeaways were, if anybody wants to volunteer to share. And then we're going to do a little accountability exercise. So would anybody like to share what came up inside of that conversation for them?
Okay, I'll go since nobody's going. The thing that came up was the question that Mark asked me, which I was really embarrassed to answer. And that was, of your asset managers and owners who own hotels, are they eager to be sustainable? And the answer is like 50% are really eager to be sustainable. And they're it's the same people that are eager to take care of their employee well-being by creating special spaces for their employee. It's the same people that want to do other things for the community. Let's build something for the local community. And then the ones that aren't interested in sustainability, they just want to build it, make money, turn it and burn it, you know, turn and churn it.
Interesting. That's sort of where we were at with our conversation, Kayla. You know, it's, you know, to what extent is it sort of performative sustainability instead of genuine, right?
Right.
And that's definitely a danger in this day and age.
Right. And Lynn, I'll add, you know, to what you were saying, you know, yes, I deal with spas and resorts, but as some of you know on this call, I consult beauty brands globally. And, you know, the fact that this isn't, you know, a top 3 in their plan, you know, they're contributing all this waste to our landfills and to the environment is, you know, pretty sad. So it's one of our company's ethos is to make sure that when working with a brand, they understand that this is a priority, that it's no longer a trend. It's an absolute movement for our well-being. So wish everybody was like that.
Yeah, me too.
You know?
But the good ones are really, really good. So that's the good news.
I think that's true.
Yeah, great insights. Anybody else want to share?
Well, I had the pleasure to talk with Thor and Said. I'm Patrick from Climate Partner, and we tackled the biggest challenge of all, the climate change in general. And I had a little bit of a teaser ready for the webinar we're giving in April about how to reduce carbon footprints. And that was very enlightening with speaking with Thor, what they're already doing in their business. So that's the challenge we're kind of tackling, and had a good conversation on this. And looking forward to maybe meet you all in April again for our webinar with you all.
Very good. Jonathan?
Yeah, I just want to say you really bring some light of hope. And I think that is a really key element to what you provide here. I like the idea of the sustainability, but perhaps with the spa, if there is a way to bring in the regenerative capacity. And I think your emphasis, of course, on water is very, very important. And I really like the recycling thing. But there is an element with that recycling, or not the recycling, but the way the combustion, the way that there's a whole new technology going on in terms of plasma arc technology. And I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it breaks it down to the molecular level. So it actually, and it's a whole other discussion we can have, but I want to compliment you in the plastic bank and the bottle. I mean, that's our issue. And hopefully we can get some of the Hot Springs folks involved. I'll bring this to Vicky at the Hot Springs Initiation Association. So, and thank you, Joanne, for this is my first exposure to y'all, and I'm just you made my day, or my week, my month. It's really, really good. I really appreciate what y'all doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, yeah, you touched on some interesting conversation there around, there waste to energy incineration is just one method of recovery. There are others, pyrolysis, plasma, and I think that waste to energy is certainly the one that people are most familiar with. But I think as time goes on, there are going to be all kinds of new developments that become more mainstream, and I'm really excited to see, like you said, how waste gets reconsidered at the molecular level, because ultimately that's all we're doing is we're really reclaiming the value of waste and turning it into an opportunity rather than an end of life situation. So
That's what Mother Nature does. She turns waste into energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and thank you, Patrick, for tuning in and for sharing. So Patrick's going to be part of our April webinar on creating a carbon-free future, which is really exciting. I just want to kind of keep things moving here. So I'm going to direct everybody to, and I see Megan's put some stuff in the chat here.
Distracting, sorry.
I'm going to direct everybody to a link in the chat box, and I'm also going to pull it up here so that we can all see. Let me see here. The next stage is becoming accountable. So I would invite you to, some of you have made the GSN pledge. This is sort of a pledge of a different type. And I'd invite you to open up your camera, scan the QR code, or click the link in the chat box and fill out the form that it directs you to, where we are really collecting these insights from GSN members on what 2022 will hold for you. And some people have already done this exercise, so it's going to be interesting for those who have already tuned in the past to sort of see where they're at, 4 months later on their commitments. For those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, please do take the time to share with Green Circle and with GSN what it is that you're out to achieve and how you're going to do so. And I would say that becoming accountable there's a certain amount of vulnerability to that. These conversations don't come easily, but ultimately it reminds me of this quote here: change begins at the end of your comfort zone. And really that's what we see all the time, is that people have to step outside of their comfort zone and embrace the possibility of evolving into something really new, challenging and different, but ultimately very rewarding, by embracing their vulnerability in where they fall short and what's possible if they commit to a higher level of environmental commitment. And lastly, I'll share one more thing with you, which is for anybody who has a service business, this is a Green Your Spa checklist. So these are some steps that you can take today for immediate action on sustainability. So again, I'll put that link in the chat, or you can scan here. I see some phones are already coming out, which is great. Thank you. So this is a way, again, for you to leave today with a way to take action and to become empowered, rather than to be having a theoretical conversation, to do something that will actually make a meaningful difference for your business.
I think Thor and Kate, they both had the same question around the fee structure for the environmental service fee. Do you want to go over that just like a little bit before we leave?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Thor, and thanks, Megan, for bringing us back to that. So the answer is that this is a buy the box program. So whatever you're able to recycle or repurpose currently, that's terrific. We want to support you only with the materials that you don't have solutions for. And the way we explain it is the local solution that you have in place, that you have confidence in, is always going to be the best solution. We're going to augment what you don't have solutions for. In terms of the fee structure, that's something that you can really build into your business in the way that best suits you. So we have education around that. Some of our groups charge an itemized fee, like a per visit fee. Some will just build it into their service pricing. But ultimately, we found that $2 allows you to not only offset the program cost, but actually to invest back into your business as well. And that will ultimately afford for the purchasing of these zero waste boxes, as well as the shipment of those materials to and from Green Circle and their eventual waste recovery. Yeah. So with that, I see we're at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, and wherever you are, whatever time you're at, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I would encourage you to check out our February 28th webinar on becoming a B Corp, because I think that's something that can provide a lot of value as well. And thank you again.
Well, thank you so very much for sharing your information and your time and your talents with our group. We really, really appreciate it. We're so proud to have you as a partner and a sponsor. And we really feel like you're doing the work that is going to change the world. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming today, and we'll see you on the 28th. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.